All right, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you are not in Vancouver like myself. Welcome to our subscriber-only conference call, part of the unique benefits that you get for your membership in the Logic Council. My name is Alexandra Sagan. As I said, I am in Vancouver as the Logic's Vancouver correspondent, and today we also have Murad, who is in Ottawa.
Hi.
We'll get going shortly with our TikTok on TikTok. But I just want to let everybody know that you can ask questions in two ways using Zoom. I'm sure we're all very familiar with Zoom at this point, but I will just let you know that if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you just hover in the lower portion of it, there is a chat icon and a Q&A icon. You can ask questions in there. We'll be keeping an eye on those throughout the conversation, and we will do our best to address any questions that you may have. So to get things going, TikTok has been in the headlines quite a bit, especially in the US right now, where there's been a lot happening. And I guess I'll leave it to Murad to sort of talk us through some of the action there.
Yeah, so it's been sort of an interesting year for TikTok, and part of this comes from the particular obsession at some point that the now outgoing president of the United States developed with it. But to go back in time, if you think back sort of a year or so ago, we were starting to see these stories from various places of policymakers, elected and unelected officials, a whole lot of people with some influence starting to express concerns about security around TikTok. And I remember the one that really caught my eye was like when they banned cadets in the U.S. Army from having TikToking from army bases. Um, Partly, I assume because I don't know, video streaming out of army bases where you can see everything is probably not a great idea. Partly because I think there were some concerns about decorum with whatever these cadets were doing in their videos, and then also partly because of this concern that we've seen with other companies and platforms that are owned or substantially controlled by Chinese technology companies around national security. There have been concerns about with there's this ongoing Huawei saga, and the concerns are around things like the handing over of information to the Chinese state, backdoors, these kinds of things. TikTok, has been very clear that they do not that they're not cooperating with the Chinese government in this way. And they've made a substantial number of moves to try and sort of assuage some of these concerns. There's been reporting about them, about ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, moving some engineers to the US, doing all of this stuff to just basically say, like, look, you don't need to be worried about the security aspect. This all comes to a head a few months, weeks, I don't know, time is a relative construct in a pandemic, ago when the Trump administration basically put a clock on TikTok. And to put it into simpler words than the actual action, it was, sell your U.S. operations to a company that's not based in China, or you won't be to get any more downloads in the US because we'll make it so that you can't be in app stores. That ban was supposed to take effect on November 12th. And a couple of days before it, TikTok sort of like knocked on the Trump administration and was like, is this thing on? What's going on? We haven't heard from you. Which followed, reports of a deal with Oracle and Walmart to take it out of ByteDance's control. There's some controversy about that, but all of this basically boils down to like this concern, and one that when we move on to talking about the people of TikTok, the influencers that we saw among people who are actually on the app posting, that the US, which is a significant market for TikTok, was going to sort of become incredibly unhospitable to its videos. Um, all of that is going on. Meanwhile, in Ottawa, Secretary of State Pompeo comes out and like does this big presentation about the TikTok ban, the WhatsApp ban, then a bunch of other stuff about their clean, what they were calling the clean network, which is basically like removing Chinese tech from a bunch of areas of the U.S. Economy. No one in Ottawa has been told this is happening. Ottawa's stance on TikTok is basically there hasn't been a position. Certainly we've my colleague Zain has asked the government a couple of times, are you going to follow the US lead? The answer was basically not really, not clear. They haven't certainly taken a public position on this yet, so we'll see what happens with that. But I think that's enough geopolitics for today. What we're really here to do is talk about sort of TikTok in Canada, and as all of this is going on in the U.S., in Canada, Alex, as you reported this week in a truly wonderful story that's worth the time you're going to spend reading it. TikTok is making a sort of substantial effort in Canada. So what are they doing here?
Yeah. So as I guess TikTok was being, and I'm going to work this in here, as TikTok was being ghosted by the U.S. administration, as the kids would say, for a little bit there, they really started beefing up their Canadian presence. And, they had a handful of staff here in Toronto in 2019, they told me, and that's up to about 40 people now. They've been hiring quite a lot of people here, and they've really been beefing up their leadership team as well. Daniel Habashi, the general manager of TikTok Canada, I believe started in May of this year. They have a former CBC executive now. They have the former, I think, editor-in-chief of Elle magazine was her former title. So they're really beefing up the people aspect here. At the same time, they've recently signed paperwork for a lease in Liberty Village in Toronto. So they'll once COVID permits, they'll have a sort of permanent physical location for everyone to be working from. And they're still hiring to fill that staff out more. A company spokesperson told me that they're going to be up to about 50 people by the end of this year. And then, of course, Reuters also reported that they're hiring about 3,000 engineers, a good chunk of which will be in Canada. And this time, of course, Canada, not just Toronto. So there is the possibility that they might be in some other cities as well. And the company has said that they are potentially looking at expanding their Canadian presence outside of Toronto. At the same time, they've also launched their first national advertising campaign here, which may not seem like a huge deal, but they're really showcasing these Canadian TikTok influencers. There's been billboards up at Yonge Dundas Square in Toronto, I believe, at the Ottawa airport. They've been running a 30-second TV spot showcasing some of the bigger influencers here. And all of that is sort of trying to say, from the company's perspective, to both the creators on TikTok here, but also people that they want using the app and consuming the content. Like, we're here, we're investing, and we're really going to try and grow the ecosystem here. And one of the reasons that that's really important to creators is because, a lot of kids are doing this for fun, and a lot of people are doing this for fun. But there's also a very real and tangible opportunity to make money and to really become a star on these social media platforms. And so one of the things that TikTok Canada is looking at now is looking at ways to help Canadian creators make money on the app, which is something that has been perhaps a little bit more available to US creators when they launched this thing called the Creator Fund in the US. It started out this summer, it was announced this summer with a specific amount of money. And about a week later, they announced that, the uptake and the interest has been so huge that they were actually going to increase the sum of money and grow it over the next couple years. And what it does is it pays certain TikTok creators for some of the videos that they make. And that's not been available here. The company says it may become available, but they're also working on other ways for creators to make money here. And all of that is trying to grow this ecosystem here and really try and get users to use the app and stay on the app and really keep that Canadian talent here.
And so let's talk a little bit about this down specifically, because as you know, as we've established in conversations with each other, and we are now going to reveal to the wider world, neither of us is particularly with it. Certainly not with the Gen Z things.
I mean, I did have to text my nieces and nephews several times while reporting this story to check a few things with them.
Right. Yes. My sister, who is listening to this call, has proved completely useless at this. So what we're talking about is, it's a mix of people. There's some people who have sort of had success on other platforms like Vine, which some of you will recall was the TikTok of whatever, the early 2010s, I want to say.
It was the first really short video platform that really took off, and then it died off. Musical.ly happened, and Musical.ly became TikTok eventually.
Right.
So these kids have all sort of, for the most part, either grown up with these platforms or progressed through them, as you say. Yeah.
And I think a couple of things that that sort of really stand out to me are the sort of the speed with which people have grown their audiences on TikTok. So Charlie D'Amelio, who you mentioned in your story, there was, in fact, I was reading controversy this week because in a video that she posted on YouTube, she complained is a strong word. She sort of noted that it would have been cool to get to 100 million followers a year after her first, I think a year after either her first million or her first video. And she hadn't quite achieved that, but she's got something like 99 million followers. And most of them have come in the last year. So to put that in perspective, that is a small European country in 1 year. That's a large European country in 1 year. And then you've got creators who are operating at a slightly lower level. So one of the things that was most interesting to me in your story was you talking about the sort of different scales of creators and how that influences the way that they work together.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the really interesting things is so much of how to grow your audience and your follower count depends on being able to get your videos out to a wide audience, which seems so simple in theory, but you need to have other friends, or if not friends, just people who are willing to do business with you essentially and showcase you in their videos and you showcase them in your videos, to really have this sort of reciprocal relationship of, we'll film a video together, I'll tag you, you tag me, and then you expose yourself to their audience as well. And one of the ways that the kids have come up with basically helping themselves do that and really feed off of each other's audiences and make it much easier to film together is to set up these so-called hype houses or collab houses, the first of which did include Charlie and her sister Dixie, the D'Amelio sisters. And these kids got together and they have hundreds of millions of followers already at this point, so they're all sort of in the same echelon of star, and they rent out this giant LA mansion and they say, some of us are going to live here full time. Some of us are going to sort of float between our own homes or even our family homes if we're still living with our parents, and sort of float between these two spaces. But when we're here, we're going to produce great content. We're going to play around. We're going to goof around. We're going to build a trampoline park in the atrium of our mansion, and we're going to showcase it all to our audiences, take each other, and really grow our followings. And this really caught the eye of a lot of people, and it spawned a lot of copycat hype houses all around the world, specifically in LA, but there's ones in Malta. I think there's one in Greece. There's a couple in the UK that I found. So they're really sort of everywhere except in Canada. And so some of these kids here started saying, you know, we could be going to Canada or to LA, and a lot of them are. There's Josh Richards, who has the following of about 2/3 of Canada, the equivalent of 2/3 of Canada. He moved down to the States in February and co-founded Sway House, which is one of the more notorious houses, and he's since distanced himself from it, moved in with some friends, and written sort of an apology to his fans on Medium about losing his way and losing his focus on what he was doing. But it spawned all these copycats, and eventually this group of Canadian teens said, well, we want in, we want some of that, and we don't necessarily think it has to be happening in LA. And so that's really what they tried to do here. And then of course, unfortunately, COVID halted their plans a little bit, much like it has with a lot of businesses.
So, so let's talk a little bit about this Toronto house, because yeah, like it's fascinating to me. There's so much about this story your story that's fascinating to me. One of which is, you know, we keep saying kids, and I just want to emphasize that, like, when we're talking about people like Charli D'Amelio, she's what, 16, 15, 16? Like she is literally still a child. And a lot of these kids, and a lot of these particularly notable influencers are still kids, and they're doing very commercial things. There's a very and this is one of the things that you and I have talked a little bit about, and we talk about quite a lot at the Logic internally, is like, I think there's a way to write about TikTok that's like, oh, look at what these look what's cool with the kids these days, and we're kind of making those jokes now, but there really is a business, and there's internet culture has been a business for decades now, and you've got reporters like Taylor Lorenz at the New York Times who've done a really good job of writing about the sort of commerce of this thing. So I think, like, our goal is always to sort of write, to treat this as a serious business, because that's what it is. When these members of this house are coming together, how are they looking to sort of monetize this thing? There's obviously sort of growing their followings between them, but you also talk to them about sort of their goals to do that, to sort of make money out of this, right?
Yeah, so I Googled while you were chatting, and Charli D'Amelio is 16 years old. Her sister is 19, it appears. So yeah, like they're kids, they're teens, they're just on the cusp of young adulthood. But what I guess how they're trying to monetize and to really make money off of this is there's several ways. One, you need that big follower count, you need fans. So that TikTok, I guess, chooses you for this creator fund if you're down in the States, or approves you for it. So that's one way. The other way is to have a fan base and that follower account that will actually give you what's called virtual gifts that people who are on TikTok can buy using real money. These virtual gifts come in the form of diamonds, and then teens or anyone with a large following can live stream. And while they're doing that, these fans can gift them those diamonds. Those diamonds can then be cashed out again for real money. So there's that option. If you have a large enough following, you can also probably quite successfully participate in something that's just sort of had a soft launch from TikTok, which is their creator marketplace, which tries to set up brands with influencers who are like-minded in order to promote their product. Now, you don't have to use the creator marketplace. A lot of teens that I spoke to don't use it and just make those connections on their own. Right. The other thing is, part of it is that TikTok is also just a launching off platform for them. And we're seeing this situation now where a lot of these teens and kids from these social media platforms, when they reach a certain sort of threshold of fame that you or I may not necessarily understand, but chat with any teenager, and these kids are household names, they're given or offered opportunities in acting and singing and all those sort of more traditional ways to make money and entertainment. There's a whole station online called Brat TV that basically plucks YouTube, Instagram, TikTok stars, puts them into short scripted TV shows, and I assume pays them for it. So there's that whole way to make money as well. But within the platform itself, it very much relies on having a large follower count, receiving gifts from your followers, and then these ad sponsorships as well. And in many ways, these teens, I should also add, don't just focus on one platform. They might have gotten TikTok famous, but they then try to translate that into YouTube as well, because on YouTube, you can throw ads in front of your videos. So that's another way to make money. So they're really thinking like traditional business people to diversify their business by using all these different platforms, which is really fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah, and I just wanted to shout out because because you were talking about sort of the sort of traditional opportunities that the universe is remaking She's All That with Addison Rae, who is right behind Charlie D'Amelio on the TikTok fan count, because apparently Pygmalion never goes out of style. The point you make about YouTube, some of these platforms like Instagram and YouTube have already developed more sort of like I don't know what the word is, more commerce type applications, right? So they have shopping features, and in fact, TikTok itself has recently added a shop button, I guess, a shop feature that allows people watching the videos to purchase specific items. And a little while ago, I was writing about these influencers launching direct-to-consumer brands. So via this feature, you can either sell your own brand. A lot of them have makeup brands or apparel brands, or you can sell products for another store or company, which is sort of a YouTube and Instagram have had sort of something along these lines for quite a while. So there are some sort of standard bits of the monetization ecosystem around platform stars that TikTok is now either set to roll out or rolling out in a way that would be familiar to influencers who've already had a presence on some of those other platforms.
I think I want to jump to a couple of questions that we have received. One is just asking about how a platform like TikTok might color young people's ideas of personal branding and monetization, similar to YouTubers. And I'm not sure that I'm interpreting that question correctly, but what I just wanted to say to that is one of the things that I think is happening is that everyone feels that they can be some kind of influencer now, and there's this whole emerging trend of micro influencers, which is this much lower threshold of, I think it's about 1,000 followers that you need to hit on various platforms, Instagram specifically I'm thinking of here, before you can actually start getting free content or free products to showcase on your channel or your account. So
Right.
so you don't actually have to have millions of followers, and I think that that's a really interesting thing for young people to be presented with, to know that, you know, when you open an Instagram account, if you get to this figure of 1,000, you sort of have your foot in the door of this world. Like, that would be very tempting. The other question, I think this is a good one for you, Murad, which is that this person is calling us out for admitting that we are not quote unquote with it. I will take that. And that there is a modest generational divide. How does that distance from emerging digital technology, how does this generational distance from emerging digital technologies characterize policymaking / politics of technology? And can we expect politicians to take on TikTok to win youth votes in the next election? Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, so this is interesting, and Vas, who asks it, is very good at asking me questions that make me think. I think there's two versions of this. In Halifax recently, in the Halifax mayoral election, there were three candidates, and one of the candidates was actually like a TikTok star in Halifax. I am resistant to calling anything a joke candidacy in the year 2020, but certainly it seemed, at least in part, to generate content for his TikTok. I think he came third of three, so there you have it. Um, so to the question, so I think there's two questions. There's a policy question and a sort of electoral question. On the policy question, I think, we've seen this thing happen again and again, where there have been so many televised hearings in the U.S. Congress of Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai and like other people like that going to Congress to testify. And every time there's like one senator who asks a like very basic tech support question, like, when I do this on my email, I see like that, and like, why does it work that way? Not really looking for tech support, but kind of like showing that they don't understand the platform or they haven't been briefed properly. And there's been lots of discourse around this. I think that will continue to happen. I mean, every new platform is sort of confusing for our sort of elected officials are certainly not generally of the generation that makes up the bulk of the TikTok user base. In terms of regulation of the platforms, I mean, I don't know that TikTok is significantly different regulatorily than a platform like YouTube. There have been the same sort of issues around to a much lesser degree, I should say, but there have been some issues around things like hate speech, allegations of bullying, those kinds of things that we saw on YouTube, and those are issues that are increasingly of regulatory focus. I don't know. I don't know whether TikTok would make a claim to being different than YouTube if it comes down to like content regulation, but I don't imagine that a place like Canadian Heritage or the Innovation Department in Ottawa would treat them differently, and I don't know that they should. That is a very convoluted answer to that question. I'm sorry. I also wanted to knock off Chris's question. Do Canadian TikTok stars have to declare that they're pushing a promoted product on the platform like American ones do? I think the Competition Bureau would say that they do. They've certainly been cracking down a lot more on like influencers who aren't declaring, like digital marketing efforts that don't declare when they're sponsored. That's been a major area of enforcement focus for them over the last, I'd say, 18 months. So I know, Chris, you and I were talking about it, and you were saying, you see that a lot more from the US influencers. But I imagine that if the Competition Bureau is aware of cases where they're not doing that, then they would probably take an interest. But I wanted to throw back to you, Alex, this question. Uh, about the opportunity for brands on TikTok, beyond sort of posting videos. What brands are doing in this space, and I think you saw some of that in your own conversations with the influencers.
Yeah, so I focused a little bit more on what the influencers themselves are doing as opposed to the brands for this particular piece. So I don't know that I can very authoritatively speak to that at this moment in time. I know that brands are on TikTok and they're making videos, and they're also connecting with influencers to showcase their content, which is sort of the biggest way, or one of the bigger ways for brands to really get their product in front of a very targeted audience, as well as potentially a larger audience than the following that they may have, right? If you get Charlie D'Amelio to showcase your product or to review it or to even wear it, you're really putting it forward in front of a lot more people potentially than your own personal brand account, because not as many people tend to follow brands. That sort of dovetails a little bit into one other question that I wanted to make sure that we answered, which was how these kids in Canada or TikTok creators in Canada can monetize their following at all without access to the Creators Fund. And I just want to be careful of making the Creators Fund sound like the be all and end all of making money on TikTok. It has been criticized somewhat by American influencers as well for perhaps not living up to what their expectations were for how much money they might actually be able to receive for their videos. That being said, it is not available in Canada yet to Canadian creators, so they do really have to depend on collaboration with brands, on brand integration, potentially using that creator marketplace, as well as the live streams. And that's a really big reason, it seems, that these TikTok influencers who are in that threshold of being able to turn this into a business, or it is a business for them already, and really take a crack at making some serious money here, tend to look at the States, and whether it's go there full time or think about going there, to really look at accessing the opportunities down there. And I spoke with a lot of kids, some who, or teens, some of who are involved in the clubhouse here, who also have spent time in hype houses in LA, because they really do feel that that presents a strong opportunity to boost their following, to access acting and singing opportunities, and just really get, gain a little bit more clout in that whole world. That being said, a lot of them also talk about really wanting to stay in Canada, and they wish that they could have all the things that they have access to in the States here, which is where this hype house really came in, I think. That's what the kids were, or the teens were trying to achieve, is to create a space for themselves where they could replicate what is happening in LA, in Canada, and get to be here and close to their families and where they want to be.
I think one thing I just wanted to touch on quickly, and if you have any other questions, now would be the time to drop them in before we run away from here and never speak of this again. So there's this interesting phenomenon with credit on the internet, right? So I remember one of the dances, maybe it was the Renegade dance, but I'm not sure. There was one of these dances that a teenage girl in somewhere in the United States had created, and sort of come up with the moves and put it to the music, and it took off. And she wasn't herself sort of popular or famous on the app, and you had all of these major influencers doing the dance before you could have sort of without credit, or without acknowledging her role in it. And I remember there being some sort of commentary around this. And it gets you to this place where so that I was just looking her up. Her name was Jalea Harmon, from Atlanta, and this was sort of coinciding with the simultaneous. Uh, uh, what is that game? How have I forgotten this? It was this game that was all over the internet, like the massive multiplayer online game that got so much attention recently. Someone help me out here. I'll remember it. Where they were doing where the dances were one of the things that players could Fortnite. That's it. Thank you, Mike. Where dances were one of the things that players could buy, and they were like skins. Basically, help them with uh, just like I don't know, customizations, things that made the game more fun. And there was this question of like Fortnite is making a ton of money selling these dances. The people that invented the dances aren't necessarily getting any of that money back. They're not seeing any of that. And I think the Renegade ended up in Fortnite as well. So you've got this 14-year-old girl in Atlanta who comes up with a set of moves. This massive game is conceivably making money off it. Certainly influencers are building their followings based on it. How does that 14-year-old girl see the return of her work and her sort of ingenuity? And I don't have a solution for this. I'm not pointing to anything in particular, but I think it's one of these questions that these online platforms could be thinking about in sort of more coherent ways. Yeah, I think. Maybe I don't know, Alex, if you want to take a crack at this one, and I think we should let these fine people go. We're seeing a lot of misinformation that was spread during the U.S. election through Democratic and Republican hype houses. Do you think TikTok's influence on young people might encourage the spread of misinformation?
I mean, I think we've seen every social media platform be up against this particular challenge. And particularly in this last US election, we've seen different approaches at different pace toward finding solutions or possible solutions. I don't think that TikTok is any different than any of the other social media platforms in terms of the ability of misinformation to spread and to spread quickly. Mm-hmm. I think that I appreciate this is not the answer that the person is looking for, but as a former teacher, my default answer on misinformation often falls back on, I really think that this is something that the education system needs to tackle, and that it is so incredibly important that educators understand how social media platforms work and that they're able to work critical thinking skills into the curriculum when it comes to social media in a way that is interesting and engaging for young people. I know that doesn't answer the question from a tech company perspective, but I really do think that is one part of the solution that perhaps we don't often talk about. But I think giving young people the skills to navigate this world is incredibly important. That being said, we have seen some social media platforms start to take steps toward slowing the spread of misinformation, or I suppose identifying potential misinformation with various disclaimers. And I mean, that is a possibility for TikTok as well. I did not speak to them about that, but that's definitely something that I think we should be paying attention to and looking at in the future as we continue to cover all of these companies.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time for us to dip. Is that the thing? Is that the
I'm
thing?
so thrilled that you use that keen jargon.
Yes, this is very important. So thank you all for joining us on this call. It's been a lot of fun for me. I hope it's been a lot of fun for all of you. At this point in time, in the middle of a pandemic, and as sort of everyone's got important things to do, we really do rely on word of mouth from our subscribers. So we always appreciate it when you share our stories or the daily briefing with your friends and encourage them to subscribe. We'll be doing more of these upcoming these conference calls, so keep an eye out. Thank you to Amanda and to Caroline for setting this up and for setting us up technically and ensuring we didn't go too far off track. Yeah, as one of them has just told you, we're in the Logic Slack channel and you should be too. It's fun. It can be fun. Please help us make it fun. Thank you all so much for your time today, and yeah, see you soon.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.